Tim Ferguson, co-director, co-writer of Spin Out. Okay, tell us what Spin Out is about. Is this an unofficial remake of the Elvis Presley movie?
No, I haven't actually seen the Elvis Presley movie. I do love Elvis, and he did have cars, but they were a Daytona, I think. No, it's a story about a lot of the people who I grew up with in Blaney in New South Wales, and they, as well as some friends of Edwina Exton, the characters who populate the film, with much of the problems being caused by people leaving the bush, by young people going to the lure of the city or joining the army because they've been on welfare for so long, or just being unable to make up their mind who they're going to choose, what their life's going to be. Yeah, when I lived in Blaney in New South Wales, at the end of every school year, Jim, there would just be this kind of a tension as teenagers just left. And there were only so many to go around. There would only be about between 20 and 30 teenagers in the town and the region at the high school. And by the end of the Christmas holidays, most of them had gone not to come back. And this has gone on and on and on in the bush, which is why Safeway can buy giant tracts of land and buy the farms, is because the people who own them don't have anybody to leave it to. They've got to sell them. So it's even then it was an important issue, and I was one of the people. I never went back. I never went back to Blaney to live or put anything back into the town. So it's that's kind of this tick-tock that's happening in the back of the guy's head, the guy and the girl, and he's starting to see everybody's leaving. And finally, when his best mate says that he's going to follow his true love to Perth, that's when, you know, our hero, Billy, loses it.
Now, who is the film for?
Oh, the film's for young people. And of
define your demographic,
15
Mr.
to
Ferguson.
25, 15 to 25, skewing female, and because of that romantic edge. But of course, it's got car action, it's got party action, it's got boys being idiots, it's got, you know, boys chasing girls. They're going to like that, but it's skewed towards young women, mainly because not many people make films for that audience in Australia. A lot of us always aim for people like us, film-going, you know, movie-understanding people who are interested in the structure of a thing as opposed to what the heart of it is. So that's who we're after. Of course, you know, we'll say, yes, and the young at heart, and the young at heart should always come along. But if you've ever been to a B&S, then it's worth going along, because we've captured the essence of a B&S, if not every filthy, scary, daunting story from B&S culture, Bachelors and Spinsters, for those people who somehow manage to live without finding out what it is. But that's our audience.
Now, how long did you nurture this idea for, and how long did you actually work on the screenplay with Edwina?
We started talking about it about 11 years ago. I met Edwina at a screenwriting conference, and she was the only person I met there out of 300 writers who wanted to write comedy. And she was very good at it. She'd written some great sitcom pilots and things. And so I thought, well, we're just going to have to write something. And what we did was we would play with it on a semi-regular basis. We'd get together, have coffee, and slowly work through the steps. You know, we worked out what's our log line, which took several tries, because log lines, 26 words that say it all, were very difficult. But we started with short documents and then moved on to a script. At draft 3, we threw it all out and we started again.
Okay. Now, how did you wrangle this deal with Sony? Because, regardless of what I think of the film, one of my ongoing complaints about Australian films, especially recently, is some of them are really, really good films. Then you ask about, why haven't I seen a TV ad or signage on a bus? There's no marketing campaign. There's no push behind it. It appears to still be, for a lot of films, an afterthought. How did you manage to get Sony behind this movie?
Sony hadn't picked up a film from script level for quite some time, for several years. But Stephen Basil Jones, who's the head of Sony Pictures, just loved the pitch. And he loved the script that he saw, even though it was an early draft. The thing he kept saying is, yeah, it's funny, but it's got heart. It has real heart, and it's written with, great affection for these characters. And of course, the commercial side of his brain would have been telling him what we were hoping, which is that it's a film for everybody. There's nobody who will feel left out watching this film. Nobody who won't be able to connect to it. So, and from there, we started to put the thing together. Now, in terms of marketing for this film, we couldn't be happier. These guys have gone from James Bond's latest film to Ghostbusters to Angry Birds to Spin Out. And they've thrown everything at it. We've got TV ads, we've got bus posters, we're talking to every regional and metro media arm that we can get our hands on. And of course people are responding to it in the media, I think because it seems to be a very Australian project. It's very, it's aiming to be funny, although that's subjective. And as the story goes along, it starts to elevate. And then we see, this actually, without us realising it, it really is just about love and commitment and community. So I think Sony, in terms of marketing, are doing a brilliant job on this. I don't know what the others have done, but films like The Dressmaker really got across the line. Red Dog was brilliantly marketed. Oddball, Paper Planes. There have been some great success stories. If there are problems in marketing, it would be that we've got 20 million people, films that have a very specific bandwidth of an audience, can only attract so much in terms of marketing dollars. And also, there's only so much money. Mm. But I guess, everybody does the best they can. Mm. We go to war with the armies we have.
Yeah. Should we be more willing to take a leaf out of the American approach and from the get-go assign a big chunk of money, 30%, 40% of the production budget to marketing the film?
Oh, I'm Pretty Pictures, jokes and script writing and directing. That end of it really is someone else's problem. The money end, I don't know what percentage, but certainly as much as can be afforded should be spent on marketing, just to let people know the thing is happening. Now, these days with social media, that is changing in terms of the possibilities, but it also means a lot of the big money that was spent on, say, just free-to-air television, these days doesn't reach everybody. When I was a kid, when you were a kid, we'd sit and we'd watch Channel 10 and it would tell us what was on, and it would be one thing: Jaws is coming. Every kid knew Jaws was coming. Now if you made a Jaws sequel, you've got to hit people on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on all of these other avenues. Oh, and yet then television. Did
you test market this film? Did you test screen the movie?
Yeah. We did two big test screenings and one which had the full questionnaire after it. And it was really useful.
Tell me about that screening, that process, because it's pretty much mandatory in America.
Yeah.
For even really experienced film directors, they won't make a comedy unless it goes through that test screening process. Tell me the value of test screening a comedy.
Mark Gracie and David Redman were really keen to do this, and they tested films before. I was a bit wary, I've got to say. I was thinking, really, we're telling a story. We're not, telling a bit of a story, checking that it's okay, and telling the next bit. What are you guys doing? But they said it's worth doing because the opinions of one person, a film reviewer, are of value if they're an experienced person. But the opinions of 200 people will give you the truth of whether something's working or not. One person's still subjective, whereas 200 people, it's why they do opinion polls. And so I thought, oh, well, we'll give it a go. And what we did was we got all these young people came in, and they just taken pamphlets from a cinema and said, oh yeah, free movie. They came in and watched it. This was ungraded, no score, sounded like crap, but, you know, and chopped together with scissors and tape. But they watched it and afterwards filled out forms, and then there were two groups. We had girls down one end of the building, boys up the other end, because the film is comedy and romance and action. We wanted to see how it balanced, and the mix of comments was really useful. Just in percentage terms, what didn't they understand, which is in comedy is, you know, that's the first thing you have to worry about. They didn't even get that joke, you know, well, it's easy then to cut the joke. But also the emotional flow of the story, when they thought it was working, when did it touch them, when were they touched by the story, and then of course which characters they liked the most. But it really started with what makes sense, and that was, for Edwina and me, very useful.
And so did you end up changing much of it as a result of the feedback you got?
Oh yeah, and the thing is, all along the line, from the moment Mark Gracie stepped in and said, I think, you know, he'd been looking at it over my shoulder for a while, but the moment he said, I think we should make this, and I think we should co-direct it, and we should get David Redman, who's like, you know, there's Elvis, should get David Redman to come in and co-produce it with me. The first things he started to do was give us very simple notes, and he was just moving the icebergs of the story. and these were really useful, not just because he was an outside eye looking in, but because, like, the guy's made 9 feature films, and God knows how much TV. He knows how to, you know, build these things. And from there, then we started to get notes from people at Sony who would have their observations on each new draft. And Edwina and I would just soak those up, and as much as we could, you know, obey. We would obey the opinions of people who do this for a living. Because, you know, this is our first feature, both of us. We're just babes in the wood. So if somebody says, you've got a problem at the end of the second act, there's a problem there. Firstly, we don't have any idea where the girl is. She's disappeared for 10 minutes. And, you know, secondly, what is the boy doing? Is he even upset? And it was like, I guess we're going to have to look at that. But then we had Sony US towards the end. We're giving, once we were doing the edits, we were up to, I think, our 13th cut of the film, and they sent just 2 pages of notes, which were, I've never seen anything like it. And from now on, when students want notes, I will give them the way the Sony people did.
How was that?
It was as if they were watching it from space and didn't really care all that much about even the notes they were giving. It wasn't that they were going, you know, hey, you knuckleheads, you know, you've missed this. They were just saying, you know, we have noticed that there is confusion in this part. Look at clearing that up. A couple of times they offered, you know, possible solutions to the problems, but most of the time it was just, there is a problem here, and you'll recognise why there is a problem, because this is confusing. And that was it. But that was enough to make us go, oh my God, away we go. Because those people do it for 80 films a year. They've got a team of people who do nothing but they just sit in a room. It's hell. They sit in a room, they read the script, they watch the latest cut, they have a chat, and someone in the corner types the notes. And this is all they do. So it's more than one a week they're turning around. So we just said, we obey everything these people tell us, because none of us know as much as what these people are telling us. It was only a couple of pages. Some people would say, oh my God, you can't go taking advice from Americans. They're only the makers of the most popular and successful film franchises the world has ever known. It doesn't make any sense to ignore people who know what they're talking about.
this is a serious point, and I'm glad that you've raised it without me having to dilly-dally and dance around bringing up the topic, because it is still a measure of cultural cringe in the film industry here, that there is still reluctance to this idea of looking at America and taking the best lessons that we can from it.
The thing with a genre film is, because Australia, modern Australia, started as a convict colony, there is great suspicion of tradition, there's great suspicion of institutions, which you will see in a B&S. Boys and girls turn up, the boys are in tuxedos, the girls are in ball gowns, and within an hour they're covered in mud, the sleeves are torn, they've trashed themselves, they've trashed the institution of ladies and gentlemen behaving and courting each other. And Australians do this with everything. Like when the Queen turns up, people are like, oh yeah, they'll turn up in stubbies to see the Queen, because we don't stand for the traditions from outside. And genre stories, which go way back to ancient Greece, and even they were writing about them because they'd heard them hundreds of years ago, genre stories are someone else's institution. And so Australians are very wary of someone who says, I'm writing an action film. Straight away they go, well, you don't have the money, and you won't have enough dynamite, and how much green screen will there be? A Western, it's like, well, it can't be done. The only person who's done it without criticism was Nick Cave with his film, because you don't criticise Mr. Cave. And so with us doing a romantic comedy, it's the same thing. When I teach at universities, I teach at NYU,
yes,
where the question doesn't come up. They go, of course, I'm writing a rom-com. In Australia, students will carry on a bit, and they'll come to me and say, I told my friends I'm writing a rom-com, and they think there's something wrong with me. They think I've failed. But that's because in Australia, we want to invent our own stories, as opposed to reinvent based upon a recipe that got invented by Shakespeare.
Really both.
We can do both. And if you look at, the really successful films we've had, Strictly Ballroom, even Crocodile Dundee, they're both romantic comedies. In fact, people would be shocked to hear that, of course, it's a romantic comedy, Crocodile Dundee, but it's a classic.
Tim, I've got to just tell you what I thought of the film and what I thought would have made a great movie. Firstly, the whole Ute thing. You had that at the beginning of the film, and one would have expected it to be maybe in the middle and then at the end again, or to use that as a structuring device. And I was surprised that you get it over with in the first reel, and then never really go back to that action and excitement. And then the rest of the film pretty much is spent at the ball. And that's a long time for an audience to spend in one location, and it didn't move on to a third act, or into a third space, if you like. And the tension between the boy and the girl, there seemed to be a lack of backstory. Late in the film, you see a carving in a tree, and I thought, is there a missing scene here? Are we coming back to something that we haven't seen? It struck me as a little bit. It actually struck me as a bit underwritten, if anything.
Oh right.
After what you said, I know that sounds like.
It was all of those things that you think are missing were in fact written and then taken out for a couple of reasons. One is the script length, and the other one was the practicality. We did have Billy in his ute towards the end of the second act, going mad in his ute and driving around and going through a marquee, and the marquee was attached to the car, and all this is happening. There wasn't the money for that. This is a low-budget film.
Okay.
And then it was just Billy going around in circles being angry, and we just thought, let's just stick with the character, stick in the ball, stay in the bottle. And I don't mind that people might feel like, man, we're still at this ball, because if you've been to a ball, they all go on too long.
One of the characters spends a good portion of the film covered in fecal matter. Why is this funny? I mean, the thing explodes and then he's walking around and I'm just thinking, dude, change your shirt. There's no reaction from anyone else about this. People would be running from this guy. Why is that funny?
In a way, it's not supposed to be funny. It's a metaphor for here is a guy at his lowest. And it's happened kind of accidentally because a bunch of guys are idiots and have blown up his porta potty. And really, it's to have him at his lowest when he goes and expresses to the hero, hey, you know, even though I'm covered in other people's shit, I've got a dream. I'm going to do something. I'm going to go with this girl, even though she hasn't given me permission. So in a sense, like it's funny when he comes out and goes, yeah, but after that, until he finally gets the beer off himself in a way that helped our story, which sets off the mud fight and all that stuff, then it's not really, we're not supposed to be giggling, we're just supposed to be watching this character dealing with, you know, what do I do? The fact he's not emotionally affected by it is because he's got bigger problems.
How are you feeling?
Oh, you mean feeling health-wise?
How is Tim Ferguson?
Oh,
how are you?
Fine. I've got, you know, MS, and it presents itself for me by turning my legs into loaves of bread. Because I experience spasticity, it means that my muscles are on. You know, when you see people who are spastic, they will be doing this. The fact is, it's because their muscles are tensed, not because, you know, they're getting the wrong messages. And so what it means is that, you know, my legs don't work. But I'm halfway through a world tour with the Doug Anthony All-Stars. We just smashed Edinburgh to pieces. We won the festival. We won the Spirit of the Fringe Festival. And I just made a movie. So the fact I can't stand up means I'm the lucky one who sits around all day and gets pushed around by beautiful people.
We're going to get a second movie soon? I want to see that.
Soon is up to other people, but yeah, we've got a couple of nice ideas and a good script, pretty well cooked.